Hi, everybody. Y'all quiet in here like it's a little church mice. Good evening, and welcome to SJI's Intergenerational Think Tank. Looking around the room, it is indeed intergenerational, and so that makes my heart happy. For those of you who didn't see the food, there's food in A66. We're going to start the screening of the film. Feel free to grab food, bring it back in here to watch the film. And then after that, we'll do a moderated panel discussion. Once the film is over, I'll introduce our guests and then open the floor for Q&A. But my name is Ayesha Hardaway, and in addition to my role as a faculty member here at the law school, I also have the great honor and privilege of being the director of the Social Justice Institute here on campus. Before we get too far into tonight's event, please allow me to express my gratitude to CARE Ohio for their sponsorship and our many internal sponsors here on campus. I also, where did he go? He was just here. I also could not do any of this work. None of this would be possible without SJI's staff and volunteers, some of whom you've met today. Allison, will you wave your hands, please? Ali Reza, who was just in here. Behind you. Thank y'all. Ali Reza, who is our current postdoc scholar fellow, and then the beautiful Hannah, who's at the registration table, is an undergrad research assistant who's been working with our institute for 2 years now. Will you join me in just giving them I am extremely grateful for their time, their talent, and their dedication. And I want to thank you all for taking the time, for choosing to be with us tonight for what I am calling Cleveland's debut. Can I do that? All right. For Cleveland's debut of Black Beauty. We're honored to launch this convening of SJI's biennial think tank in this way. The bulk of our programming is designed to provide space for community affirming and community sustaining fellowship and thought-provoking dialogue across the various identities that make up the strength and the beauty of who we are collectively in the struggle for a socially just society, for socially just education systems, neighborhoods, policies, practices, and dare I even say, laws. And we recognize that it would be a fool's errand to embark upon such an effort to strive for social justice absent a clear-eyed understanding of the ways, as the drafters of the Combahee River Collective statement stated it, right, the interlocking oppressions, and I will add the governmental repression that so affect the subjugated, maligned, demonized, and even the forgotten. So with that in mind, I'm delighted to have with us, you'll see Black Beauty here soon, but this film is created, featuring, and directed by the beautiful Elle Moxley. And Elle has been so gracious as to be here in the room with us while we watch this film. Will you wave your hand so they can see you? I have to tell you all, Allison and I looked high, and did we not? We looked high and low for a film that we thought would be fitting for the LGBT experience that was aligned with the mission and the vision of SJI, and it was only by chance. It was only by chance that in a separate meeting on other things that I had a conversation with Elle, and she just so happened to say, I have this film. And I was like, wait, what? I gotta see it. What do you mean? Da, 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 da. And it's a perfect manifestation of what I would love to share here on campus. So thank you for being so generous to share your gift with us. And as her special guest, she has with her my dear friend, my beloved. Elle gets to have first street creds with you, but I've been trying to get a close second, right? Miss Amari Rice. Miss Rice knows I love her. Miss Rice knows I will fight a tree for her. And so through this film, through intimate conversations with Elle's mother, Lisa, her childhood friend, Tonica, and her dear friend, Miss Rice, Black Beauty traces Elle's story from her experiences as a teen in Columbus, becoming a founder strategic partner of what you all know as the global movement Black Lives Matter, to her organizing work on behalf of Tamir's legacy with Miss Rice in Cleveland and beyond. As Elle explores her history, she relays her vision for our collective future. And so I'm really, really excited about what might be generated as a result of us enjoying this film together. The format of tonight's film is to watch the film, and then the runtime for Black Beauty is approximately 30 minutes. At its conclusion, I will introduce our moderator and our honored distinguished guest panelists for them to take over and have a moderated conversation about the trans experience, whatever they want to talk about. I'm not going to even say what they're going to talk about. Whatever y'all want to talk about. And then we will open the floor for Q&A. And Ali Reza and I, as he disappears and reappears, we will have microphones that we pass around to do Q&A before we depart tonight, because we want to hear you all's voices in the room as well. With that, can we start the film? I want to do two things. The first is to remind you all that this is the beginning of our think tank weekend. Tomorrow we have an all-community reception at Ridolph Farms. I don't know where Allison is. I think it's 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock. The registration and information is on our website and also in the program if you have the program. The second thing that I want to do is to thank Elle and Miss Rice for sharing the gift of that production with us. And I want to let you all know, that I'm in many places where, in spaces where Tamir's name is often lifted up, both in Miss Rice's presence and outside of her presence. Miss Rice is hosting the 10th anniversary commemorating the life of Tamir Rice at a gala November 3rd, the other third number, November 3rd, which is a Sunday. There's an Eventbrite page for that. If you're interested and you can't find it on your own, please we ran it in our newsletter. So if you get our newsletter, refer back to an old newsletter. But if you're interested and you can't find it, please reach out to me or Allison. You could just do socialjustice@case.edu and email to that address. And we'll make sure you get the link to buy tickets, to support and to love Miss Rice, but also to honor the legacy of Tamir's life. Now, for our panel discussion. I'm so excited about this. Y'all don't even know. I'm going to introduce the panelists, give brief bios, and then the moderator, and then turn it over to the moderator. Our first panelist is Noel Cummings. Noel is originally from Montgomery, Alabama, but is a longtime resident of Cleveland, Ohio, at Cleveland's Ward 6. She holds an MBA from Cleveland State University and is a former employee of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. After 27 and a half years of successful service with that employer, she was terminated, which she maintains was wrongful and marked her entry into social activism. Noel is a woman of trans experience. Thank you for being with us, Miss Noel. I call her Miss Noel. We also have Elle Johns, pronouns they, them. Elle is a graduate assistant at the CWRU LGBT Center and is a first-year student at the Jack Joseph Morton Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences, where they are pursuing a master's in social work with a concentration in community practice for social change. Welcome, Elle. And if I get through this next one without crying, Amari McGee is a distinguished LGBTQ+ advocate, educator, researcher, and one of my first babies that is originally hailing from the vibrant city of Cleveland, Ohio. He has made significant strides in promoting understanding and acceptance within the community. Amari's personal journey, marked by a transformative female to male transition in 2018, served as a catalyst for his passionate advocacy work. The life-changing experience not only reshaped Amari's personal identity, but also ignited a fervent desire to educate and support others, passion for education for others navigating similar paths. Looking towards Amari's future, he plans to pursue a PhD, a doctor.
105th Street, Opportunity Corridor, Cleveland.
Oh, that's okay. I don't have Siri, so everybody's Siri's be trying to talk to me. I don't have it. With characteristic determination, Amari has set his sights on pursuing a doctorate degree within the next 5 years. It's an ambitious goal that aligns perfectly with his ongoing mission to continue fostering a deeper understanding of human diversity and to educate others on the vital topics of transgender history, contemporary issues, and rights. Through his multifaceted approach to education and advocacy, Amari McGee continues to make significant strides in promoting acceptance, understanding, and equality for the LGBTQ+ community, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape of social justice and human rights. Please welcome Amari. And our gracious moderator, I'm so grateful to Avery Ware. Avery is a writer, educator, curator, higher ed professional. They are currently the LGBT Center Director at Case Western Reserve University. Avery is also the founder of MX Juneteenth, a Black and queer liberation celebration. His work can be found on on their website at averyware.org. Thank you so much for moderating.
All right, is this thing on? Can y'all hear me?
I don't know if it's on.
Oh, there we go. All right, we got action. All right, thank y'all for being here. Before we get started, I want to thank you so much for that just like authentic, raw, like to break yourself open and show the world, like that takes a lot of courage. So thank you so much. It's going to help so many, not only Black trans people, but people of all identities. They can take a lot of stuff from that 30 minutes you shared with us, and we about to get into some of it. So thank you. To get started, let's just do some brief introductions. Just take about 5 minutes to share some key aspects of your journey with the audience. And Amari, I'll start with you, and we just go down.
Hi everyone, my name is Amari McGee. Pronouns he, him. I do identify as a transgender man. Shaker Heights graduate, so I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Grew up here for a very long time. Currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia. Currently right now I'm getting my master's degree in social justice and human rights at Arizona State University. A lot of my work stems from the research topics of trans studies, gender and sexuality studies, queer theory, and of course transgender history. For the past 8 years of my life, when I first came out, it's been really just educating my family first, them really being the catalyst to my journey of expanding my education into the public spectrum now, and of course in corporate America as well. So that's really a little bit about me, very brief, and I thank Case Western for allowing me to come in, and I'll pass it off to Noel.
Good evening. My name is Noel Cummings. I am originally from Montgomery, Alabama. I am the youngest of 6. I have 4 sisters and a brother, 2 of whom are deceased. This is a first for me, attempting to share my narrative in public forum. So I appreciate Elle and what you've done to help open those doors. As Ms. Bell Hardaway mentioned in my bio, I come to this juncture of public expression because of the experience I had of being terminated from a job after 27 years of successful experience. And I had already transitioned to female, I got my master's degree after I transitioned. So I was just trying to prepare myself. I am 61 years old. And so the opportunity to exist in the format that I exist in today was not something that was apparent when I was born. It was not something we discussed beyond straight and gay. Although intuitively I always understood that my real issue was gender. Before I had the language to affix to it, I knew it was gender, not sexuality. And so as I was given the labels as a child of a sissy and a bag and a this and a that, those were hurtful things, but they were hurtful because I understood that people were attempting to be hurtful. And so now that I've come to this juncture where I am outed through my experience to have to fight for myself, I understand that there is a fight for the younger people. There is something to my experience that I hope that I can share so that they will understand that they can go further than I've gone, but that there are structural dynamics in this society that are set and established to work against you. And no matter what space your gifts make for you, there are institutions and there are values in this nation that will see them stripped away. And it goes from Miss Amelia Rice to the loss of her son, taking career, to people doing whatever they want to do to you. And I've tried my best to fit in, but there are always energies to push me out. And so here I stand. And I'll pass it to Ayesha.
Hi everyone, my name is Elle Johns. I use they, them pronouns. As I said, I'm a first year student at Mandel getting my master's in social work. But I also did my undergrad here at CWRU, and I did that in religious studies, and I'm a 3+2 student, so I'm technically still a senior. And I'm also from Cleveland, and so I've been here my whole life. I love Cleveland, and I love working at the LGBT Center under Avery. Avery is a great, great supervisor. Yeah, I'm really excited to be on this panel today because I don't often have opportunities to talk in front of a crowd of people or with other gender ambiguous people or gender diverse people. So I'm very excited for today.
Thank you. That's actually a good segue because it's so rare that I'm in spaces and conversations with other Black trans people, and I love that's a lot of Black trans excellence here. And you talked in the documentary about needing to be surrounded by other Black trans women. So I wanted to ask the panel, and anyone can start, how important is it to be in community with people with shared identities?
I'll get started on that question. For me, growing up here in Cleveland, growing at Shaker Heights, it was very, I feel, welcoming, accepting, but a lot of people really didn't come out until after we all graduated. So my experience here in Cleveland didn't give me the first experience of the LGBTQ plus community, and especially not the trans community at all. I'm not saying that it wasn't here present in the year of 2016 and prior to that, of course, but moving to Atlanta was my first experience of all the LGBTQ plus you could possibly think of. When you think about Atlanta, most people say it's the gay mecca, right next to LA probably. So for me, going into that space and realizing that I had no knowledge, no prior information, absolutely nothing, first coming out as trans and navigating that experience firsthand. Being in Atlanta has given me the strength of knowing how much a community means, especially being around, like you said, Black queer excellence, especially. A lot of people took me under their wing when I came out because I told them that I want to do my best to make sure that the voices of all generations, no matter who they are are heard. And I know that that does start with obviously the youth as well, just making sure that we're passing along the traditions that Black trans women have done to make sure that they're in the forefront back in, in the old days, and then now currently, like I said, just continue to pass on that with what people like to call neo-activism, right? Um, for me, being in this space allows me to grow, also learn from those who are in the forefront, who are at the front lines as well. I worked and done oral histories with people within the Georgia trans history mostly, but also just taking in the experiences as well as I navigate through my own personal journey of, like I said, learning more about trans history and just getting as many stories as I possibly can to make sure that people hear these stories and to understand that this starts with us. It starts with community, it starts with family, it starts with friends, it starts with, like I said, those who are considered to be your chosen family. And if you don't have them with you, I think it does make it very, I won't say foggy, but I think it does just give you a clearer light, but also gives you a lot of love behind what you do as well. And that's why I think it's very important to have a community like us, no matter your background. But like I said, definitely being with Black queer people definitely makes my job a lot fun, easier, and also gives me the common sight and the light to enjoy what I do every single day.
This has been a controversial aspect of my existence because I personally do not necessarily identify as trans. I am a woman. I'm just a girl. And transitioning is the process that allowed me to inhabit this space. So I find ownership or labeling or identifying with process different. So I'm just a girl. And I have found strength through my alignment with Black women. At times it has been painful because they sometimes express that they feel there's an invasion of their space as they own it. But I go from the space of Maya Angelou when she says we are more alike than we're unalike. And I understand my womanhood to be something different in terms of how I arrive to inhabit this space than it would for a cisgender woman. But who I am as a woman has less to do with a process. I've always been who I am. And so whether I was fortunate enough to be able to transition physically, which I was, it wouldn't have mattered. This is my energy. This is a part of the feminine, the divine feminine. And so up until the experience that I had with my job, I had very few people in my circle who were trans. And so when I had the misfortune of being terminated wrongfully and I began to reach out to a community, to the LGBT community, it was a eye-opener for me. That was where I first heard stories of other people who were like me. But there was no instant or organic connectivity. And so I have had to find myself working to build that connectivity. But the factors that will influence all our lives are much bigger. And I am concerned about sometimes when we build those connectivities within community, we sometimes create an isolation or a subculture that the broader culture begins to target, and they can ignore you and they can marginalize you all at once. So I try and strengthen the ties that bind to the broader community, and I am receptive to building relationships with people within community, so to speak. But it is so important that we not allow ourselves to be isolated and fragmented in when we're trying to just be a part of the broader society. So, and I know that's sometimes a difficult topic to navigate, and it's a controversial position, but this is how I experience my womanhood.
I guess the first time I came out, I was in middle school, and then I went right back into the closet because I felt like nobody took me seriously. And then during COVID, I felt comfortable again coming out and asking people to use they them pronouns when referring to me. Well, actually, at that time I was going by she they, but yeah, it was kind of slow. But my first year of college, I met a really great group of people who were also exploring their gender identities at the same time as me, and we were all kind of able to grow together, and I'm so happy about that. Because I lived in gender inclusive housing, and so everybody on my floor was, everybody in my quad was trans, and yeah, I don't know, it was a great experience to be around other people who have different gender identities, but were still trying to figure it out for themselves, because there would be moments where I'm like, oh yeah, I totally get what you're saying, but then it's like, oh wait, no, I don't know what you're saying, actually. But we were kind of all still on a very similar journey, and over the course of 4 years, I've been able to see everyone else become more comfortable in their identity, and I've also seen myself become more comfortable in my identity. But I also feel like the relationships that I've had with specifically my Black trans friends really do stick out for me, because those are the most, I feel like, intimate relationships where somebody really understands my perspective as someone who I consider myself to be gender nonconforming or non-binary or genderqueer, some variation of those. And in that way, I feel that I exist outside of a binary, and I think only someone who's already been able to explore their gender in a similar way could connect with me in that way. And my Black peers, they also, especially my female to male trans peers, they understand that connection to Black femininity sometimes that I still feel like I still have a connection to. And so, yeah, my community is very important to me, because I feel like I wouldn't have come to understand myself or fully accept myself, really, without their support.
Thank y'all. I think you all mentioned coming out at some point, and anytime there's a queer event, I think coming out is always like the topic. But I want to approach it a little bit differently, because oftentimes I feel like when we come out, it's less of us trying to be ourselves and more of us trying to like coddle or educate the people around us. So how did you navigate coming out, and how did you kind of balance, like, this is something that I'm doing for me to live in my fullness, and then try to include y'all and bring y'all in without it making it about other people? Does that make sense?
My experience, I came out twice technically. Like most trans people probably do, they come out twice, right? You go through the first phase of coming out as lesbian or gay, or like you said, probably non-binary. Then you go through the other phase of figuring out actually what your identity is. But for me, my first experience with my family specifically, I remember coming out first to my uncle, who was on my dad's side. Him and his wife were the first ones to know. I told them at around like Christmas, I said, hey, I think I might be trans, and I don't really know how my father will react to it. To sum it up, my dad's very, very quiet guy to himself. Immediately they were like, we will support you no matter whatever somebody decides, and etc. For my mother, on the other hand, her main concern for my transition was during the time of police brutality against Black men, right? When the George Floyd thing happened, she was very, very antsy and very in a panic mode about kind of, are you sure you want to make this decision, right? For me, I knew for a very long time, after a while of studying and kind of get to know who I was, that I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And the matter of it is, yes, I want my family to be a part of that, but if they weren't, I wasn't going to stop my decision to make it. So I was very headstrong. Before I transitioned, I did a lot of studying. You know, I learned as much as I could about what it means to transition, what does that look like, and obviously, knowing what I know now, there's really no right or wrong way. It's really more of what you make it. But at that time, I was just like, let me just figure out what's the steps to make this happen. And I didn't transition for probably about 2 years after I decided. I was like, yeah, I want to do it. Study for 2 years, and I was like, okay, like I feel confident I want to make this decision. So for me, my main concern was really just, do I know what I'm doing, right? And I think now you think about it, you say no, you probably still don't know, but you want to be confident in your decision of making a decision this big. As I just mentioned, it's not really about like, you know, how you feel. It's like, you know, this is what you want, and you just transform it into the person that you really want to be. And that's what I knew I wanted to do. I knew that this is who I actually wanted to be, and I just wanted to make sure I was doing it right. My family come along actually worked out for me. But like I said, my mother's main concern is more my safety during this time. And she made a valid point of that, because I didn't think about it. You know, I didn't think about me navigating the experience of a black man now, from a black woman to a black man. What does that look like for me? Will I have to go through the same things? Do I have to go through the same experiences? And, you know, so far, no. I can say that for me personally, in my experience so far, and I'm only 26, but I'm a very privileged black trans man. And that's the thing that I like to mention a lot of times when I am doing speeches, because I never had to go through any hardships. I don't have any terrible stories about my life so far. My family has been accepting from both sides. I've, you know, been in positions where when I get a job, it works out for me, you know, and these are things that I make note in my experience, because I want people to have the same experience as me, right? I know that that's normally not always going to happen, but I like to share that with people, because I feel as though if it can happen to me, it can happen to you as well. And I hope that it always can happen. So I didn't think about my safety. I didn't think about none of that. So taking that into consideration, that also made me step back a little bit before I made my decision to transition, because I said, if I do go into this space, how will I handle these things that black men do have to experience? Will I be ready for this? Is this something that I can protect myself from? Is this something that I can handle mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually too as well? And that took a little bit of some time to think about. But after I did, and reassuring my mother that, you know, I know that these are experiences that you've seen, that our family has seen, and I want to reassure you that I feel like I'm making the right decision, and that I can be able to take care of myself when that time does come. Like I said, it's still early in my life. I hope I never had to experience it, but then again, I know that it's inevitable when you think about today's times of making steps toward inclusivity, but also still seeing that we are probably going to be taking some step backs possibly. So just preparing myself all around just to make sure that I can handle it. So I made myself prepared. I feel confident in my preparedness, but I also make sure that my family is also prepared too, as well, as I continue on my journey with my life.
For me, it was one of the things that I hope you all are grasping as we go through this experience is that I am so many generations older than you. As we speak to this experience, I hope you can hear the time shifts and the way we frame things, because what was and was not possible at the time. So with respect, and they're able to get to where they are so much earlier in their youth. For me, I was in my mid to late 30s, generally understood to be a gay male. And even though I understood that the dynamics in terms of the behavior looked like gay, I understood that what was going on internally was something different. And I had those experiences personally when I went to the first gay club or what have you. And I realized that in terms of what you see from the outside, it all looks the same. But to get to know the people And I had a really good gay friend. And as we became closer, we understood that we were something different. But it was a beautiful time for me because it helped me understand that the issue was not just gay, and that it was indeed that it was something psychologically different. So by the time I got to the point where I was considering transitioning, I was in my mid to late 30s, and I realized that I just couldn't go any further with my life. Living in this set of circumstances where I had to pretend, and I believed that I owed myself the chance to live fully and free, and to be able to inhabit the space and understand myself and live how I felt I wanted to live. Because I was so old, my concerns were with respect to the biology. Will I be able to look like a girl? Am I jumping out of the frying pan into the fire? Because with, the trans experience, because of the world we live in, so much depends upon whether you have the right look, whether you can pass, because if you can't, you may very well be exposing yourself to a level of public scrutiny that may be even worse than what you may have experienced when you were just thought to be gay. And so those were the considerations I was ruminating over as I decided whether I should do this. And so it wasn't an outing per se, but it was a revelation. And when I called my mother, who was a church lady and a devout Baptist, the mother of 6 kids, she had a bad marriage. I so desperately did not want to be hurtful to my mother, but I felt that I needed to speak this truth to her. And when I told my mother, I said, well, Mama, I'm going to transition. And she was like, transition to what? I'm going to have the sex reassignment surgeries. And she was quiet for a moment and she said, we always knew you were different. She said, I thought you was a melancholy baby. And for those of you all who don't understand what it is, back in the day, when certain babies were born and their emotional connection and stuff was delayed, they seemed to be sad, and people just called it a melancholy baby. But from what we know now, they may have been on an autistic spectrum or what have you. But people just labeled it melancholy. And she said, because even when we go back and look at the pictures, there was always something sad about you. And when I went back and looked at some of my early pictures, I could see it. As a child, I wondered why my sisters getting their hair pressed and I'm not. Why are they getting new church dresses and I always have to wear pants? And I remember my youngest sister was actually 2 years older than me, so she was off to kindergarten while I was still at home. And I remember she had a lime green little Sally dress that I adored. And I went and put that dress on, and I just felt like, oh, how wonderful. And so my mother was in the kitchen cooking, and I went to her and I was like, Mama, ain't I pretty? I just felt so right in that dress. And she looked at me, and I could see the angst in her face. And she said, child, go pull that dress off. And so I did. But that was the first time I understood that whoever I am and whatever is going on, it is not a good thing to go put on a dress. And so that was the pretext of me having this conversation with my mother. She said, well, why didn't you come to us sooner? And I said, Now, you know we don't discuss stuff like that in this house. And she laughed and she said, "You right." But they were really, my family has been everything to me. I had 4 sisters, and my oldest sister, who I recently lost, when I was talking to her, she said, you know, whenever we would see these things on TV about sexual changes and this and that, we always thought about you, but it was just not something that in the Southern culture was open for people to discuss. But she said, what you don't realize is we have a perspective on your life that you don't even have. We saw you growing up as a child as you were coming into yourself, and we always knew that you were more like us than you were like any of our male cousins or our brother. So you do what is right for you. And my older sister was always, yes, you can. If I said I want to fly to the moon with no wings, she would have said, oh, yes, you can. And so at this juncture, you know, thinking about coming out and what that means, you know, I was already at work when I transitioned. I was a member of the Olivet Institutional Baptist Church and had been there since I had been in Cleveland. So the look changed, the appearance changed. I stepped away from the choirs for a moment, but I went back, and there was a certain level of accommodation, but I realized later on when I needed my church family. When I needed my church family, that is one of the most politically active churches, no one was there for me. I met with the pastor. At the time that I met with Pastor Colvin, our current mayor was on the board of trustees at RTA. And nothing comes of it. I've reached out to the mayor, nothing comes of it. So there's so much that I try and process. And, you know, so the coming out thing is, I feel like I'm always coming out. I feel like I haven't come out. You know, it's just one of those things.
I feel like I'm out, but not to my family in any way that feels significant for me. Like I said, I tried to come out when I was in middle school, and I felt like nobody took me seriously. And since then, I've had conversations with my grandma, and they're usually like, well, I use the pronouns, and then she says, well, I'm a different generation, so it's gonna take me longer to start using your pronouns, and then that's it. And then she doesn't use my pronouns that I prefer, and so it's like a whole thing with me that nobody in my family really knows about my gender identity. But I do think that everybody considers me to be the gay cousin, which I'm totally fine with that. I love that. But like just like the specifics of my identity and who I am are something that really like people only at CRU know, like my employers and my friends here. And just like my community here. So in a way, I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to be around so many people in a professional setting who do respect my identity every day. But then I look back to my home life and I don't really know if anyone in my family understands me or who I am. So my hope is that one day I can actually have a conversation with my family members. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not out, I guess, to like 50% of the people in my life.
Well, you're out to me, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Ms. Noel, it stuck with me when you said that your sister said that we have a perspective on your life that you don't have. Because I ain't gonna hold y'all. The motivation for the question was I'm always kind of frustrated. Well, I was frustrated with like my mom and my family when I was coming out because I feel like they centered themselves in my experience. And I'm just like, it's not about you right now, girl. It's about me. And I experienced that so much, especially now working with so much college children. And they're coming out. They're like they out here, but they might not be out to their family. And I'm like, well, this is about you. And you're inviting other people in when you decide to come out. But it can be a selfish experience. But I love the community aspect and the perspective that your sister gave because it really can be, and in a more liberated society, it could be a very intra-community experience where I'm sharing something with you and you're sharing something with me, and we're all moving towards a more liberated society, right? So I just wanted to name that and thank you for sharing that. I want to shift gears a little bit. I hope nobody gets up and walks out because we are in election year, like 10 days away or something like that. And I remember in around 2015, 2016, when kind of the general black community in Black Lives Matter was discontented with the Democratic Party, and there was voices of dissent, which I was one of them. So now that we're in another election year and we do have a black candidate on the ballot, how do you, and we all do some form of liberation activism work, how do you balance the limitations, I would say the limitations of electoral politics with like liberation work? That's why they asked me to do this.
A lot of my work, like you said, it has a little bit of balance between both, right? Working in education, and a lot of times, most of my work coming from like corporate 500 companies, right? Whenever I do like presentations or speeches, lectures, or something of that nature, somebody brings up politics, and a lot of my gist of that is, like you said, being like, even if you have enough evidence, it's still hard to change somebody's mind sometimes, right? And I bring every evidence. Everything that I do is research-based. I try not to do anything where it's opinion-based, where it's, me just kind of giving my thought process on something, or just hearing it through the grapevine. So my balance with like just trying to be able to make sure that I'm incorporating both, like you said, making sure that I'm educated from an electoral standpoint, but also, like I said, just being like, hey, I just want to also be a libertarian sometimes. It's very hard because I always want to persuade people in a way that just makes somebody seen as human rather than being like, this is who you should vote for, and etc. Obviously, I'm always going for the individual who cares about the people more than anything else. But I think sometimes it can be a little hard to have a little bit of balance from, especially with me doing a lot of traveling and, like I said, just going to different places on a consistent basis. I just think it's hard. It's hard for me, at least. I'm not sure if anybody else might say that, but.
I tip.
Yeah.
It can be difficult if you allow it to be, but I am so clear. All of my family, for the most of my life, have been staunch Democrats, and it was a Democrat by default. However, one of the beauties of being differently situated in the population is you get to see things from different perspectives. And I am so clear that politically we are in a very, very bad situation. The reality that I understand is that the two-party system is totally dysfunctional. The Republicans and the Democrats are more alike than they are unalike.
Oh, definitely.
And when you look at how this nation has moved from the beginning to now, it has been the same settler, colonialist, white supremacist, capitalist dynamics. They look differently across time. They put on different window treatments, but the inside of the house that Jack built is the same. You cannot root a nation in the genocide of the natives than to bring in another population to be enslaved. Never confront those two things in a way that is substantive. And wake up 300-400 years later and think you are what you say you are. You are not. And so the way I balance it, I am truthful in the circles where I have an audience. It is an uphill battle because people have been so programmed, brainwashed, and indoctrinated till it's very difficult to see this thing for what it is. But it is destructive. We see it playing out internationally. You cannot make sense to me that the majority of this nation, especially the working class, is saying consistently, we would like universal health care. We would like a public education up to university level. Other nations are doing it. But you tell us from both wings of that bird that no, it can't be done, no, it can't be done. Then you turn around and commit billions with a B to militarism, to killing people, to promoting and advocating war. The American state is, and I think it was Martin Luther King who said it, is the biggest purveyor of violence, bar none. And that remains true. So when I see the fact that this nation has two organizing principles, capital and race, and they interplay and have always interplayed through the generations, and the subsets of the division along class breaks down along women, men, gender identity, sex, sexuality. They pit us all against each other. And then we are busy running around fighting amongst ourselves, whereas the elite on the left and the right continue to live like the plantation owners that they descend from. The best I can say of this nation is it is, and I refer to it affectionately as a plantation nation.
It is.
The dynamics of the plantation are playing out to this day. And until we confront those things in a very fundamental way, we're headed to an unraveling, and it is not going to be pretty. And that's how I try and balance it, by being honest with myself and as honest with my peers who will listen and at least take the time to at least think it out. We cannot, and I'm going to wrap this up, we cannot continue to vote our comfort and leave our conscience at the gate. If our dollars are yielding and unfolding genocide, we need to find the personal and political courage to say no to both of them. And that's that.
Because it's like what I think every single day, but it brings me so much anxiety. And so I've been really struggling with so much anxiety recently. I feel it in my back and my neck. It's like crazy. But so yeah, I've been thinking about, it's like, do I really, I feel like I'm being pushed into a corner where there's like one side that's saying, well, don't you want reproductive rights? Don't you want your gay rights? Don't you want all these other rights? We can help you with that, but we still are going to give all of our money to the military. And so I don't feel like my vote matters, but it's scary to say that because everything, at my core, I also believe that voting matters so much and that it's so important as citizens to exercise our right to vote. but it just doesn't feel like we're voting for anything real. It's like all a smoke screen right now. Yeah, so how do I deal with that? In my personal life, as Noel said, I try to talk to my peers about it, and thankfully, I'm only peers with people who are on the same page. At least I try to be, and keep those people close to me, because it's so serious, and we're talking about like the future of the entire nation, of like the whole system of the nation, and so my anxiety will usually come from like, well, are my rights protected, but also am I going to be safe if I settle down in a certain city based on climate change, and I'm gonna be honest, like, it doesn't feel like either political party that's currently running, the major parties, have a plan to address climate change in a very productive way. And so that's also something that I'm scared about. So I try to do climate activism in my own time. And I try, as a social work student, I try to be in community and go to different community events, especially ones around food security and agriculture, because that's where I feel, well, one, I like being in nature and it calms me down, but also I feel like food is such a basic need that I always want to be with the people who are helping my community members to have food access. And yeah, I think it's really just like, the issue is so huge that I have to make my world feel a little smaller and do just the good things in my world, because yeah, I don't know, so much anxiety.
Yeah. No, that was perfect. Thank you all. And speaking of anxiety, because we just talked about some like real heavy stuff, I want to transition to the buzzword of self-care, but transition to mental health. Like, how do you stay well?
Go ahead, you guys can answer that, and then we want to open the floor to questions before everybody leaves. Okay,
Perfect. All right, so real quick, how do you stay well, especially in, I don't want to say declining society, but how do you stay well in declining society?
I'll keep mine short and simple. My family is my backbone to everything. So anytime I'm with them, it brings me joy. I'm a big hiker, so I understand exactly what you mean. I'm a very big hiker, and I also like to do research. Research is fun to me, and it, although it might seem tedious if you think about it from an academic standpoint, for me, I just do it for fun. I just like to read, so that normally keeps up with my mental health. I probably should do better with like the physical, maybe getting a massage or something, but I don't do it as much as I should. But my family, for sure. Hiking is another one, and just continuing on the research to make sure that I'm doing something in this community to better it, and make it more just.
I pray and I meditate, and those things have opened up a whole different universe for me, so that I can center myself in the middle of what I understand to be a storm. And when I was a child, there was a song that said, well, I'll go if I have to go by myself. And, we do the best that we can to build the bridges and sustain relationships that are worth it. But other than that, that's all I can do. All I can do is pray and meditate.
Yeah, I also pray. It took me a long time to circle back to praying being something that I felt comfortable doing and connecting with spirituality in general. And I think also being at my placement at the LGBT Center every day that I'm there is just me being like drowned in queer joy, and just like a bunch of undergrad students who are so adorable, like really genuinely, and they always come in with so many questions and so many interesting things that they want to talk about, and they remind me of myself, and yeah, I just think being around queer joy a lot helps me a lot.
All right, so open it up for questions.
Any questions?
For Al Johns, how did you say you identify yourself? Because I don't think I quite heard it.
As gender nonconforming or non-binary.
Okay. And then you mentioned something about working at a center. What is the name of that center?
It's the LGBT center on campus here.
Okay. And then how long have you been a part of that center work?
A year and a half.
Okay. And do you feel like being in that position, it gives you some kind of, I don't know, positive feedback because you're helping other people?
Yeah, it definitely does. I can talk about last year I hosted a bi-weekly social group called QPOC, which was for queer and trans people of color. And we ended off the semester with a collaboration with the Office of Multicultural Affairs to do a whole roundtable where we wanted to get feedback from students about how the university could better support their needs as queer and trans people of color specifically. And that was my largest turnout for QPOC. Over 20 people came, and it was amazing because I did get so much feedback. But it also, some of the feedback that I got was that just having the event in that format made it so much more enjoyable, and people really enjoyed it. And it also was a way for people to genuinely be able to talk about the experiences that they were having on campus. So that was a positive experience for me, where I learned a lot about my community members, but also about how I could improve the services that we were providing at the LGBT Center. So yeah.
Come on, y'all. Are we serious?
Well, I could go all day. So.
Okay, I have a question for Amari. You mentioned that you currently live in Atlanta and that it's more inclusive. So how do you feel going to a more inclusive environment versus coming from somewhere that is a bit less inclusive? Is there any advice or anything that you wish you could see in your hometown?
I would say absolutely yes. Like I said, I think coming out, like I said, kind of post Cleveland for me. The thing is, a lot of people that I grew up with are very inclusive. They're very supportive of who I am today. They never was kind of like, hey, you're doing the wrong thing or you're making the wrong decision. When I decided to come out as trans, from people that I went to high school with or that I technically grew up with, from the students to the teachers that I worked alongside with, and also my second family or parents here in Cleveland, everybody has been extremely supportive. So I don't think that, from that experience of before I left to go to Atlanta, it wasn't. I think a lot of people were just afraid to come out and not really be exactly who they were because they didn't really know what that looked like here. Like me going to my first Pride in Cleveland was very small compared to Atlanta, which we're talking about like a 2-mile walk, and you have literally parades of people who are out there supporting you and they don't know who you are, they have no clue, but literally I'm talking about thousands of people are outside supporting exactly who you are, from kids all the way up to older adults, right? In Cleveland, it's the size of this room of people who's out, during the Pride Parade. It might be bigger now. Like I said, this was a couple years, yeah. But this was a couple years. Okay, good. Yeah, this was I'm sorry, this was 2016, 2017. So it was very small at that time when I was there. But I think our community here in Cleveland has a little bit of some work to do. Like I said, you talked to Mayor Bibb, and Mayor Bibb is not.
No, I reached out to
Reached out.
He
Yes.
never responded.
Exactly, right. So Ms. Noel is making the point of doing more in our city just to make sure that our voices are continuously to be heard, not only just from the queer experience, like you said, from the trans experience as well, which is all the same, but like you said, we have intersectionality within our own group. Like I said, we're going neck and neck with each other sometimes. It's kind of just we're supposed to be a big happy family, but like I said, it want to be one side for one side, and another side for another side. I think that we have the dynamic here in Cleveland. As you can see, whether you're a sports fan or not, like I said, I think Cleveland is very welcoming, and I think, like you said, we can definitely be a big happy family. We fight sometimes, we might not see eye to eye sometimes, But I do think that inclusivity here has still some work to do, don't get me wrong. And I think that, from like I said, my experience here living in Cleveland basically my entire life, that the area that I was in, we have always been accepting. I think a lot of people was just afraid to make that decision to come out and be who they were. But since they did come out, I've only seen praises for everybody. And everybody's told me good feedback. You know, we talk amongst each other still, from people that I went to high school with or middle school with, and we say, how's your experience been? They still tell me it's been great, you know. And like I said, people that I grew up with and parents and family, Atlanta is just a different type of breed. I will tell you that. Like I said, it's not as big as Cleveland, of course. It's very small compared to Cleveland. But I think that if we make the steps, like I said, I think we'll absolutely, like I said, from it being bigger this year, which is a good thing, we can be as big as Atlanta's and making sure that we're being inclusive of everyone that's around us.
Thank you. I love this. Hi, y'all. Wonderful job. I just have two things, a question, and then, of course, folks, please come out on November 3rd and support the Tamir Rice Foundation and Samari Rice Honor the Life of Tamir. Your support is so greatly appreciated. My question for the panel, lots of questions, but I'll conflate and join them all together. I made this film essentially because I needed to remember my own story. And it was in remembering my story that the stories of the people I loved were also very important to me, because I knew my story couldn't exist without theirs. And one of the difficult things is acknowledging the pain that you carry with you when you've learned of the stories of those you've loved in yourself. But I titled the film Black Beauty because I needed to remember that I was beautiful despite. And so I'm curious how you all are finding the beauty in yourselves and those around you despite the gloom and the despair and the sorrow that often follows and travels with us through life.
For me, I'll say people that I'm very close with that's a part of the trans experience, we tell each other we love each other every single day. I know that I love myself, don't get me wrong, but I think being able to share that we are living for not only each other, but like you said, for other people, like I said, who are no longer with us, like I said, who's growing up and looking up to us as well, and just making sure that we are providing a level of like I said, love and comfort for each other and solidarity. I just give myself some grace sometimes because I feel like I give myself imposter syndrome a lot. And I think that makes me feel like I'm ugly sometimes. And my family and everybody around me reassures me that it's not that. You know, they see the smiles that I get whenever I am helping and educating people about our experiences and what it's like to be trans and et cetera. So that kind of helps me get myself back up. You know, I have to look at myself in the mirror sometimes and give myself motivation to be like, you can do this. Don't doubt yourself, because if you do, it's not that bad things will happen, but it's just not, everybody makes mistakes, or everybody, you know, it takes some time to learn. Even myself, like I said, as being an educator, I'm always continuously learning. So even if I feel like as though I'm not 100% sure about something, you just have to give yourself a pat on the back to let you know that you made it this far, you know. And like I said, I'm a man of a lot of privilege, so I make sure that I make that note too. It's just like, a lot of people aren't in the same situations. There's a very small percentage of that. So you gotta give yourself some grace and just continue to pat yourself on the back and just, like I said, listen to the people that's around you that tells you that they love you every single day and that they thank you for what you do. I think that's the beauty that I thoroughly enjoy from the people that I surround myself with in the work that I do.
For me, I am profoundly aware that there is a purpose for my existence. And what I say to myself on a regular basis is, I've done the best that I can. I have suffered and endured a lot of trauma over these last 10 years. reaching out to the political community, to the religious community, saying, can we have this discussion? I am not crazy. I can prove what it is that has happened to me. And not being even able to have the conversation. But I've always understood that it wasn't me. I cannot make these people engage. And so I never questioned my own beauty. I think it grows richer by the day. Internally as we endure, I know that I am not a bad person. I know that I have been mistreated. But when I look across our people's history, and I consider the greats, the stalwarts like the Martin Luther Kings and the people who gave it all and were destroyed, I understand that that is a part of what struggle means. And so I do the best I can where I am. I cannot change the world, but the world has not made me doubt myself or doubt my own humanity or the integrity. And I pray for my peers. I pray for the people who have hurt me. And that has not always been an easy thing to do, but when I do it and I feel the true compassion, I acknowledge that that is who I am. And so it is not a difficult thing for me. I am always centered within my understanding of myself.
I feel like I get my perception of my own self-worth and my beauty from my perception of my grandma and my mom. My grandma raised me, and so a lot of my character is from her. She's a child programs director at a nonprofit, and she was doing that for my entire life. So I consider her to be a social worker, and I think of it as a family business. And with my mom is so strong, and she's endured a lot of trauma in her life, and I've had very similar experiences. And so I look at our lives and how they line up. The timelines are actually kind of crazy. And I see where she is now, and we also look a lot alike. So it's really, really easy for me to compare us. But I see that she has endured so much, and that I have to do the same, really. And I really don't have a choice, and that's okay. But yeah, I think that they're both beautiful women, and I'm really happy that I'm related to them and that I got a lot of my strength from them.
Well, with that, I cannot tell you all how wonderful this has been on so many different levels. Thank you for sharing your time, your story, your being vulnerable with us. Thank you again, Elle, for such a beautiful, beautiful film. I look forward to seeing those of you who are able to join us tomorrow night and then Saturday in Tinkham, where we'll be on a day-long session. Mark Lamont Hill is our keynote speaker. Amari McGee is going to join us. Our panel names for Saturday are Lest We Not Forget. The second panel is 70 Years Later, What Brown Cannot Do. And the third panel is The Beauty and the Struggle, Pain and Promise. I really hope to see as many of you out as possible. Have a good night. Oh, there's pizza. Allison's going to kill me. There's extra pizza in A66 if folks still want some pizza. Please grab it. Thank you.